Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of our series, Not Another Demo. For those of you that have decided to skip episodes 1 through 10 and jump right into number 11, Not Another Demo is the Cloud Security Alliance West Michigan's attempt at changing the narrative and the conversation a little bit with vendors and making it a real conversation, really finding out and learning what a company is able to do for your organization. So as always, I've got Anthony from the CSA with me. Also, today we're joined by Pat Nicholson and Kevin Burdak from ZScaler. And so we're going to be talking about, I'm guessing, like VPN and remote workers and all that sort of good, fun stuff today. So with that, Kevin, I'm going to pass things over to you and let you guys introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right in.
Well, Matt, thank you very, very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I think this is a unique way to just kind of collaborate, across the state of Michigan and share best practices and technology. So I appreciate it. And Anthony, thanks for taking time out of your day. So Kevin Burdak with ZScaler, responsible for the Michigan area. I'm focused on large accounts here. And just appreciate the opportunity. And with me today, I have, as I call him, the security ninja, Pat Nicholson. So thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Hey, guys, thanks for having us. Pat Nicholson, ZScaler sales engineer, working with Kevin as well as another rep by the name of Mark Vinkier. Been with the company for about 2 years now, so excited to chat with you folks today about what ZScaler does.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you guys being here as well. I'm excited for this one. So I think it's super relevant for everything that's going on in the world right now. So one of the things that I like to do is to start these presentations with is just ask a simple question. So, nobody's traveling really, right? We're all sitting in offices. We've got more vendors than ever are trying to fill up time on our calendars. We've got probably more meetings, more Zoom meetings than ever on our calendars. All of that taken into account, can you guys give us some reasons or explain why someone should take a meeting with ZScaler and spend an hour with you guys?
Yeah. Pat, maybe I'll jump in just from a high level. Okay. I think, Matt, you talked about just how things are changing, right? If we go back 5-6 months ago, people had different solutions in place. And I think this COVID-19 has really catapulted technologists and more so security professionals into that arena, probably at a higher rate of speed than they probably were planning on it. So, it's with everybody pressing to the cloud, moving compute to the cloud and applications. I think it's relevant now that people are working from anywhere, whether it's a coffee shop or at home. How do you secure that now work from anywhere? And so I think with us and what we bring to the table, purpose built for the cloud, in the cloud, I think it's a perfect opportunity and timing just to learn what we're doing and really turning the security paradigm on its head, right? It's that next wave of digital transformation is that security in the cloud.
So the question I always like to ask after, the why should we take a meeting with ZScaler is what business problem are we trying to solve? I think we know that here with ZScaler. So I'm going to pivot a little bit and ask a different question. How does this differ from a traditional VPN solution?
Sure. So, Anthony, I'll give you a little bit of background on what ZScaler does. So, as some are aware, we are a cloud security web gateway or proxy in the sky. Our users send their traffic either through an agent or a tunnel into our environment. Now, with a traditional VPN, what we've seen is customers either have two choices. They can either split tunnel that traffic and it goes out kind of naked out to the internet, and all their RFC 1918 related traffic and internal traffic is coming over that split tunnel, or they're doing a full tunnel, meaning that all traffic is coming back to that data center, that regional headquarters. So customers right now without ZScaler have to make a pretty difficult choice. Either they look at improving the end user's experience by allowing their internet traffic to go direct out that NIC card, or do they bring everything back to a central security stack impeding on the user's experience, but knowing that's a more secure experience. So with Zscaler in play, what we would suggest is that all of your internet-bound traffic go to one of our data centers. So our agent intelligently locates the closest tenant that you work within. There, that tenant is managed through our portal. That portal manages and is included in over 150 of our data centers. So one place to put all your policy up. Now, for your internal related traffic, customers can still run a split tunnel, or they could look at our Zscaler private access alternative, which simply is a new way of providing secure remote access to internal assets without putting the user on the network. So we once called it a software-defined perimeter. We're now using terms like zero trust network access. But the great thing about Zscaler is that one agent on one machine provides both VPN replacement and secure web gateway functionality.
So architecturally, how does that look? So I've got this agent on my work, laptop, and I decide today I don't feel like working in my office. I've been sitting here for weeks on end.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to my local coffee shop for the morning and have my coffee, and I'm going to work there. I understand the internet access side of it. So, the traffic's going to your data center and being inspected and all that fun stuff. But for ZPA, when I need to get to the server file share, how architecturally is that set up?
Sure. So like you mentioned with Zscaler Internet Access, all your internet traffic is going to be scanned. I mean, through that, we have a next generation firewall, AV detection, malware prevention, data loss prevention, sandboxing, all that good stuff. But your question is, Anthony, is what happens when I want to reach out to an internal resource? So what happens is with Zscaler private access is the same agent allows that user to authenticate into the environment through a SAML assertion authentication. And what we do from an architectural perspective is we place what's called an app connector on the network that contains the asset or application that remote user needs access to. What happens is that app connector creates a outbound TLS connection into our cloud, and you working on your agent reaches out and creates a secure TLS connection into the cloud. Through authorization authentication, we determine what your identity is, Anthony, and then we determine what access policies that are granted to you. Access policies are made up of applications. So for instance, let's say that you're a third-party vendor or you're an employee. You have absolutely no access to anything behind that app connector unless there's a policy written for you. So what would happen is that upon authentication, a policy is applied to you, and then Anthony, knowing your identity, we would be able to determine if you had access to the file share segment or the web app segment, and we can get as granular down to a specific FQDN or fully qualified domain name and ports and protocols assigned to that. Unless you qualify for an access policy, you have access to nothing because we never place you on the network. You can't ping, you can't telnet, you can't do a port scan, you cannot do an Nmap. None of those things that typically hackers or bad people or even just people interested in learning about their own network those tools that they would launch. None of that works because your session remains in our cloud, and our cloud brokers that relationship between that app connector and the applications on the network.
So how are you doing that technically? Are you, if I reach out to an internal resource, how does ZPA know to move that traffic to the connector on site? Are you doing it via DNS? Is it, are we setting certain IP ranges inside, or what's that look like?
Yeah, that's right. So each connector is independently installed and configured. By the way, they're configured in pairs for redundancy and resiliency perspective. but each connector is defined with the app segments or resources that he has access to. So yes, that can be through DNS, that can be through exact FQDN entry. It could be a wildcard. Many times our ZPA customers will start off with a wildcard entry and allow everyone to access the entire network just as if they were running a VPN client. So as our customers kind of grow with the product, as they're deploying it, they start to put more and more stringent access policies in place.
So a whole lot of stuff that I want to unpack there. Something beautiful did happen in that conversation. Now, Anthony twice said ZPA, and Pat, you actually spelled out ZScaler private access a couple of times. So well done there. You're following the not another demo rules to a T, which is great. Anthony, we got to work on that a little bit.
Yeah. Of course I have it.
So I want to kind of step back to the beginning of that conversation. So we talked a little bit about what's happened with COVID as people are, I think a lot of people kind of unexpectedly had an immediate remote workforce. Maybe they weren't prepared for it. Maybe they had some VPN in place, but it wasn't up to standards, that sort of thing. So maybe that drove a lot of people towards looking down this path. But eventually we're going to come to the other side of COVID, right? And at some point there will be a bit of a balance between, my guess is a lot of companies are looking at, do we bring people back? Do we not? Do we in some fashion? So as the pressure of, hey, all of our workers are working from unsecure Wi-Fi all over the place to maybe half of them are back in the office and half of them are not. Does that change, I guess, does that change the need? I hate to use that word, but I guess because I also heard a couple of things in there, Pat, of you're talking about, I think there's some usability stuff, right? As far as keeping your internet connection local when you're using Zscaler, as well as some security stuff. So can we talk a little bit about like post COVID or post what we're going through when business settles back down a little bit, and what the value of looking at a Zscaler solution is when we're not hyper focused on remote workers?
Sure. So let me paint a scenario then where we have a potential customer or client that has many remote locations. So yes, we've sent those workers home, they're coming back home. But in order to really, deliver what the Zscaler Internet Access Platform is providing, you would need a number of point products, meaning you would need to have a proxy, a next generation firewall, a sandbox, a data loss prevention mechanism. You would need endpoint security. You would need visibility and monitoring. You'd need some sort of load balancing. So really, Matt, our business case is pre-COVID was take a look at the sites that you maintain today. Do you really need a stack of appliances in that site to protect your users? And the answer is absolutely not. If you think about the way the transformation is happening, applications have left the castle and moat kind of design, where the moat was the perimeter security architecture, the castles where the jewels were. So now that we have things like SaaS applications, and Microsoft has done a really good job of kind of driving us to the cloud through Office 365, once our applications leave, that really determines what we're going to do next with our network and our security.
So I'm going to stop you there for a sec. I'm going to say I agree Zscaler is a great tool to add to the arsenal. But when you say absolutely not, you don't need all those other things. I'm not getting rid of my EDR anytime soon. And that's just a fact. And while cloud-based and SaaS applications are definitely becoming more prevalent and moving forward, on-prem file shares are still a thing, and they're going to be a thing for a long time. So I do want to caution, evangelizing that a little too much.
Well, yeah, I would. Well, you know what, Anthony, what I was gonna back up a bit and explain is that where the crown jewels are, we would still need a traditional security perimeter. So my analogy was around a remote site that may not have anything of value in it, but yet we're still spending on a stack of equipment for users that have left and applications that are no longer there. So yeah, you're exactly right. We would never come into a customer and say, hey, you can get rid of all your perimeter security at a data center where you're housing file shares and applications and things of that nature. Our play really is around that remote worker, that remote branch, where there's no reason for us to be spending on even an appliance like a firewall UTM. You know, our suggestion would be to push those responsibilities into our cloud and maybe run with something like an SD-WAN appliance that can simply have a basic ACL on the outside and all traffic is default routed to us.
Pat,
Okay.
maybe another particular use case to answer Anthony and Matt's question as far as how do we see it in the future, right? So we have a client, let's not name that client, right? They use a lot of third parties that come into their organization and then out of their organization and may need access to a particular application that, as you defined it, is a crown jewel that sits within their network. Traditionally, they would have to go through and spin up different appliances and gain access and things like that. And we've been told that it takes a long period of time. I've heard anything from 3 weeks to 4+ weeks. They might need access to particular environments for a short period of time. And so I think as companies do that and leverage outside resources, Zscaler can help enable getting them access based on policy, whether it's external applications or internal applications, and we can do that more effectively and more efficiently. So post-COVID, people are still going to be leveraging third parties. People are still going to be needing access to critical systems for a short period of time, whether it's new development or testing, et cetera. And I think Zscaler can enable that. And Pat, maybe you can unpack that a little bit without sharing that client's name.
Well, let me jump in then, Kevin, because I'm probably not as familiar with some of this stuff as maybe Anthony is. I don't live in the real world like he does still. I live in a not real world. But so let's say I am, I'm re-looking at the architecture of how my company operates, and we're going to spin up a small remote office with 10 people in a neighboring city because we were able to find the employees there that we wanted versus the town that the company is headquartered in. Are you guys saying that it's a very secure thing to be able to put them in the office with Zscaler in place and be able to access all the apps without having to build out the kind of the traditional security footprint in that remote location?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. What we would suggest in that case is use Zscaler internet access to protect their internet traffic, and then roll with Zscaler private access to be that VPN replacement to get them back into that data center where our important apps still live. Or leveraging ZPA to access a private or public cloud environment. As long as there's an app connector in that environment, we can broker that relationship between that asset and the user through our cloud.
Okay, so this is where I wanted this conversation to get to, because I know when COVID first happened and people were all panicking about VPN and remote workers and whatever. I mean, that's all well and good. And I know and I'm not saying you guys, security people and companies in general like to, I hate to say take advantage, but we take advantage of situations that come up, right? And sometimes acquisitions can be made that are short-term thinking because something happened, right? And now I need to protect me from this for 6 months or whatever that is. But I like having this conversation where we're actually talking about fundamentally changing and making more secure how we're doing our operations, not just now or not just until a vaccine or whatever is the end of COVID, but moving forward. So does this also do things like make it easier if you say wanted to move buildings or offices, or maybe you're renting a place for now and you're building right? I mean, does this make your remote staff be much more mobile? Like you don't care
more
then,
nimble.
You don't care if they're in a remote office or a coffee shop or at home or on a cruise ship somewhere at that point, right?
No, or back in the office. Yeah, the agent works wherever the user is. So, yeah, you got it. We're making this a more nimble work at home or work from anywhere employee.
So so you mentioned back in the office. Are there benefits to people accessing stuff through Zscaler if they're even in the office?
Oh yeah, 100%. What we can do in that perspective is we start to look at eliminating the necessary stack of equipment that may or may not be present there today. So, a lot of customers are concerned with the lifespan of a security stack as well as the investment, but also as you guys are probably aware, turning on additional features within a security appliance tends to diminish its performance. And so what we found is that the need to have an elaborate security stack, especially at a site that doesn't really have anything of importance in it other than users, is no longer necessary. And so we look at things like SD-WAN as being an enabler of Zscaler. As applications move and people look at the internet as their backbone, that's kind of that network transformation where we put an SD-WAN appliance in and utilize our stack in the cloud to provide the security front, minimizing the cost of an MPLS circuit. I no longer have a bunch of point products there. The SD-WAN appliance, though it may have a UTM capability, we know that turning on additional features drops throughput on these appliances because they've been built for one thing. And then, once the application leaves and your network is being transformed, well, then the next transformation stage would be how you deploy security. And that's where Zscaler.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a great segue. So this is the CSA. So we should probably talk, a bit about security as well. So I know you guys are a bit of a Swiss Army knife as far as, what features you have in specifically internet access.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what kind of other tools I could replace, like possibly my DNS filter that I have through another company that may rhyme with Cisco.
Sure.
Things of that nature.
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a very good question. One thing that we do as a proxy, which is the foundation of what the product is, we don't look at packets like a firewall. We look at transactions. And we not only, the mindset that we have with Zscaler Private Access is zero trust, we also carry that mindset into our Zscaler Internet Access platform. So in a traditional DNS lookup, whitelist, blacklist type of architecture, let's just use, for instance, CNN.com. CNN's a hosted domain in the United States, been in business for 40 plus years, has a great web reputation score. It's categorized as a news site. So a DNS type offering is going to look at CNN.com as a safe destination for the user. The user is allowed to go, and that's the last time that architecture looks at that user. Zscaler actually says, yes, all those things about CNN are true, but we do not trust CNN at all. Every transaction that user is performing on that website will be logged and analyzed, because we don't know, for instance, if there's a malicious CDN that's going to route the user to a site. We don't know if there's a cross-scripting attack in there. We don't know if there's malicious code hiding somewhere within that website. So every transaction that user has and is experiencing with CNN.com is being analyzed through us.
Is there categorically, you're able to block, say I want to block all peer-to-peer, websites and, anything that has malware or hack tools, things of that nature, those things you can categorically just, within policy block?
Yeah, that's right. So I was taking us down a little bit more of a rat hole around how we do that. But yes, of course, from a content URL filtering perspective, we have those abilities. as well as we have a lot of criteria that we can build our policies around. So it could be based on an AD group, it could be based on a location, a department, a specific user, time of day. We could put rules around the amount of bandwidth that a user could consume on a web asset. We could determine if they can upload to the site, but they couldn't download, vice versa. That's getting more into our CASB capability. But yes, 100%, Anthony.
Awesome. So when we're also talking about security, identity and authorization are, you know, a big part of that. So you mentioned, you know, that the policies are based around, you know, identity, and, you know, it knows who you are, and therefore will route you to the correct location, give you the correct policies, et cetera, et cetera. How are you doing that, and what identity providers do you support?
Sure. Anything that's SAML 2.0 capable, really, Anthony, it's pretty broad. So most of our customers are, of course, using Azure Active Directory, but that could be your pings, your Oktas, ADFS with AD Connect, you know, anything SAML 2.0 capable. And so once we have that user's identity, depending on the SAML assertion process that takes place and the attributes that come over, we're able to create very granular policies. So if we know that Anthony is in IT, he works out of Grand Rapids, and we know what time he's in the office, let's say, we could build a very, very granular policy on just you, where it acts only in a certain time of day, for instance.
Great.
So I'm going to circle this all the way back around to where we started before I change gears slightly, in that, you know, when we look at the question of why should someone spend some time with you, it sounds like that there is an opportunity here to take a look at your entire security operations, streamline some stuff, maybe make some things more secure. So now we're like completely away from talking about VPN and remote workers, right? Which is excellent. Which I think is sometimes something that happens, right? We get down certain rabbit holes and we don't get out of them. So you know, again, bringing this conversation back up, for anyone that's watching this, right? I think hopefully you're seeing that there's an entire conversation to be had here. To that, I will switch to gears to what does that conversation look like? So I always like to, from my perspective in my day-to-day job, I work with lots of different vendors. I see companies acquiring vendors. I see companies kicking vendors out on a daily basis. And 99% of the time, I find that the reason why someone moves away from one technology to another is not necessarily the technology, but is the service and sales and support and all of that stuff. So let's talk a little bit first about what the pre-sales motion looks like with you guys, and that, and so talk through a little bit of, like, you know, initial conversations up through, you know, doing a POC, POV, whatever acronym you guys use, and then into like to the signing of the PO. After that, I want to talk about what happens after the signing of the PO, because I think that sometimes is even more important. But talk about what that pre-sales process looks like with you guys a little bit.
Okay, so Matt, I'll jump in here, and I think if I throw any acronyms out there, please jump in and correct me. But I think our journey starts with a customer, or excuse me, a prospect, right? So we engage, and we come with perspective, whether it's working with different partners or we do our own research. We do the best of our ability to understand who they are as a company, what are their core objectives, and we do several discovery meetings, right? So we want to understand where their current state is and where their desired state. So we talk about that, and then, you know, depending on what their particular use case, it might be, you know, web access, it might be private access, whatever that might be. We then construct something, and we call it a proof of value. So we make sure that we're aligned with the customer, what they're trying to achieve, and even if it's incrementally, right? So we look at marginal gains. If a customer just wants, you know, to look at something other than VPN, that's what we'll start with, and we can grow with them. But we clearly understand what their core objective is, and we make sure that we deliver on that. So as we go through a journey and we enter into a POV, which is a proof of value, we think our concept works. It's all about driving value for the customer. And so we align with that. And so on the backside of that POV, we're in a position to drive business outcomes for that customer. And as we go through that exercise with the customer, we're collaborating all along the way. So your traditional approach of post POV, contract signature, bring in other individuals, our team works collectively, and we start delivering right out of the gate. And because of the foundation that we've built prior to or in that engagement process, we know what the outcomes are, what we're supposed to deliver against. And so that's how we engage with the customer. And then we'll have 30, 60, 90-day checkpoints to make sure that we're achieving those objectives. Now, along the way, when we engage with customers, not only, from a sales motion, Pat and I would be working throughout that process. We then introduce what we call a technical account manager, depending on the size and scope of deployment. It's pretty easy, but then we have a technical account manager that also sits shoulder to shoulder with us and the customer, so that as they're going through their journey, they know who to talk to, and we're still all aligned with those outcomes. You take that, and we also layer on a customer success manager. So we're not a services company, we're a software company. And so we're not backing up the truck and saying, hey, you need a lot of services, but we do have those support mechanisms, because at the end of the day, being a SaaS solution, the customer holds the right to say, yes, I'm going to renew, or no, I'm not, based on the value that you've delivered commensurate to the investment. So I know that's probably long-winded, but it all starts with what's most important to the customer, and that's driving outcomes for them.
Well, I really think I think it's one of the most important parts of this conversation that we have, though, because again, it's all happy, joy when we sign the PO, and, and the consumer is excited because they've got a new toy to play with. And then you guys are excited because you've added another logo, made another sale. 3, 6, 9, 12 months from that moment on, 18 months, 2 years down the road, that I think those are the conversations that I think are super important to know. Like, if I'm truly going to make this investment in a technology, that could be right. I mean, investing in ZScaler could be quite a big change, positive change, but quite a big change for an organization. Am I going to see them outside of when it's time to sign renewals, right? Because I hear that a lot. Like, I never see not you guys again, but I do hear that a lot from companies. Like, yeah, we only see that vendor when it's time to sign a renewal. So I do think it's important that customers know when they're making those investments what it is that they're getting into from a support standpoint.
So I want to kind of double down on that, and then Pat, maybe if you want to jump in on it, right? So we'll have quarterly business reviews with the client, right? So if there's a particular, let's say we're talking about SSL inspection, something like that, right? That's a component of one of our solutions. If we think it's critically important for them to do that, that's what we're going to be focused on. So each quarter we connect with the client and we understand, okay, how are we measuring against what their core objectives were? Where are areas of improvement? So it's not, hey, sign the deal and move on. We truly view it as a partnership, because we look at the long game with the customer, not just that one instance of selling them a solution. So I can't stress that enough, is whether it's quarterly business reviews that we do with customers, whether it's executive reporting that we share with, like, hey, the number of threats that were blocked, areas of focus. And it's not necessarily from an upsell perspective, it's maximizing their current investment. And naturally, that opens up the doors to say, hey, you're doing a great job for us here. And as something might come up for renewal, they might say, hey, let's take a look at this. Maybe it's CASB, maybe it's something else, just because of our nature and how we're focused on outcomes for the customer.
So, so to that point, again, we've talked about a lot, and you guys have a lot to offer. I hate to coin a phrase because it's probably one that's on the back of our upcoming Not Another Demo t-shirts, but companies don't want to boil the ocean, right? So, Pat, maybe you can talk a little bit about how do people typically start with ZScaler and then kind of build from there, so they're not trying to take on everything at the same time.
Sure. So let me start with ZScaler Private Access, because that might be a little bit easier to start this question with or answer. So a lot of customers will look at ZScaler Private Access initially as a VPN replacement. So from a deployment perspective, they simply put a wildcard entry in, anyone who has the Zscaler agent and who has been identified and authenticated will have the same experience as they did with their VPN client. So typically what will happen is we'll run both clients and then we'll move them eventually just to Zscaler. And then as the customer gets more and more familiar with our deployment team, so again, the crawl, walk, run mentality, the deployment team and the customer will start to increasingly develop more complex access policies to start to lock the environment down. But initially it's kind of left wide open. We have a way to automatically discover applications and build policy off of that. So that would be Zscaler private access. Again, left wide open, and then we lock it down over time. With Zscaler internet access, because the platform has so many capabilities, it really depends on what the customer is attempting to do. Again, being a cloud proxy at our foundation, a lot of customers will simply look at, you know what, our blue coats are getting long in the tooth. We can no longer update and upgrade them. They're end of sale, end of support. We just want to use you as a gateway, a proxy. So in that case, Matt, what would happen is we would simply load agents onto domain users' machines, as well as we would create either IPsec or GRE tunnels from the WAN edge into our environment. And within just a few hours, the customer is taking advantage of it.
For clarification, is it 2 separate agents, one for private access and internet access? Or are we talking one agent?
No, just one agent, just one. Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah. And now the great thing I was going to mention about ZPA real quick is that, again, the great thing that a lot of our customers enjoy is that once they change networks, close their machine, what have you, with ZIA and ZPA, that authentication happens automatically. So if you break the link to us, you don't have to re-authenticate like with a traditional VPN client. So depending on what it is that they would like to consume in our platform, we normally start off with basic web and content filtering. Then we will move into getting SSL inspection enabled because as you guys are probably aware, 90+% of the internet now is tied up in TLS traffic. And in order for us to apply advanced security policies, we need to be able to crack that session open. So SSL inspection would normally be the next thing we would look at. And then based on what bundle they had purchased, we may enable the cloud firewall, we would enable CASB, maybe if they went a little bit more advanced, data loss.
Cloud access security broker. Sorry.
Yep, sorry, cloud access security broker, excuse me. Yep, I messed up that one. But maybe they look at data loss prevention, or maybe we want to start including our nanolog metadata and have that sent in a syslog fashion to their on.
That was going to be my final technical question. This is obviously generating a lot of information and a lot of value. How do I get that into my SIM so I can write alerts for things that I want to see, or anything that was possibly missed?
Yep, great question. So of course, no security admin wants to be banging around 7 different portals to try and align what happened, right? The SIM is there for a purpose. So what we do is we provide what's called a nanolog streaming server. It's just a lightweight VM that sits where the SIM does. So we take that encrypted and compressed log from our environment and then basically ingest it into a syslog fashion, which can be delivered to a SIM. Now, we do maintain up to 6 months of logs in our environment, but any admin really is not going to want to be in our portal, then another portal, and then looking at their SIMs.
Well, and plus there's compliance requirements that are going to require, holding onto those logs for longer. So.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct.
But for a company that's maybe in the middle of changing SIMs or looking at one or doesn't have one, because those certainly do still exist, they would have the ability to have at least 6 months of stuff in your environment. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, literally, Matt, we could go back and see what you were up to like in April on a Sunday, right? I mean, not that you want to know that, but we could deploy, actually report on that. So yeah, lots of great, amazing analytics, the ability to craft custom reports, have those reports launched at will. Yeah, lots and lots of visibility in the platform.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, hey guys, I am looking at the time, and as all the good conversations do, this one is could just continue on. But I really, Pat, Kevin, I want to thank you guys for sharing some stuff. I hope this opened up people's minds a little bit. Again, I think I love it when the conversation kind of stretches out and we talk more about security than features and functions. And I think we accomplished everything that I want to do with this series today. So really appreciate you guys being a part of episode 11. I can't believe we've gotten to episode 11. For everyone that's watching this, please do all the like and subscribe and share and all of that sort of fun YouTube stuff. Subscribe to our channel as well. Hey, we're up to like 220 subscribers now, so we're doing all right for a little organization. So anyways, with that, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you for episode 12.